Welcome to episode 32 of the Practice Squad, a show where we talk about football and make the replacement refs look like pros. I'm your host and fourth-string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co-host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
All right, let's get this over with. I got college football to watch.
That's not what we want to hear on such a celebratory week. So we're live right here on YouTube every Monday night during the postseason. And we pretty much get on when we feel like it. We're trying to shoot for 7:30, so come join us live next week and the following 2 weeks. We've got so much great stuff to talk about tonight. We've got a sort of exciting, sort of not, divisional week to talk about. We're going to talk about each of the 4 games that happened. There was a crazy upset, a crazy high-scoring game, some expected things that happened, some unexpected things that happened. We're going to complain about the rules. We're going to complain about the refs. We're going to tell NFL why it's wrong. And we've got some great darndest things for you tonight, and we're going to close out our night with some predictions for the championship week this upcoming weekend. So let's go ahead and get started with the first game of the weekend, which was my beloved team, the Niners, played the Vikings at Levi's Stadium. And as a little bit of history, so this was the first playoff game that's ever been played at Levi's Stadium. The first year of the stadium was in 2014, which is the year after the Niners lost to the Seahawks in the championship game. However, Levi's Stadium, for those of you that don't know, was the new stadium that was built after the Niners moved out from Candlestick. And Candlestick hosted 27 playoff games in its history, which is the most at a single venue in NFL history. So think about all of the awesome Niners teams from the 1900s, and then a handful of playoff games in the 2000s as well. There's such a rich history at that stadium, and they showed an aerial view of just the dirt patch that is where Candlestick is now, because that stadium got mowed down. So now we play in Levi's Stadium, and we're starting off on a great note. The Niners take down the Vikings 27-10. And I attribute this to a couple of things. So first of all, time of possession was a huge factor in this game. The Vikings just couldn't keep the ball. The Niners ended up controlling the ball for 38 and a half minutes of the 60 minutes of play. That's a 17-minute differential. So whenever you do that, your defense is just going to be super tired, and the other defense is not. And I felt like outside of the one touchdown where Kella Witherspoon just sort of didn't know what he was doing, the Niners D clamped down hard. Cousins had not very many yards. He had an interception. He got sacked 6 times, never looked super comfortable. And I felt like this was the first game in a long time now where I felt like the Niner defense was healthy, on fire, was doing what it's designed to do. We haven't been this healthy since week 7. So it was awesome. Perfect timing. Really glad we got that bye. And I think we're rolling into next weekend. So I'm super excited about that. And nobody got hurt, which is amazing. Nobody got hurt in this game on the Niner side. So we're going into next weekend healthy. The other aspect, too, was we saw Dalvin Cook had a good game against the Saints, and we saw the Vikings bottle up the run against the Saints last week, and that was how they were able to upset Drew Brees and company at the Superdome. But on Saturday, Dalvin Cook was only 9 carries for 18 yards. So he had a 0 game, and the Niners' run game really took over. I'd say that was their primary reason for winning the game. They were 47 for 186 yards on 4.0 average. So I was just surprised by that, considering how well the Vikings bottled up the run game against the Saints last week that they weren't able to do that this week. And then, of course, Sherman had that great interception. My only complaint, and then I'll give it to Joseph for his thoughts, but my only complaint on this game on the Niners side was, I've said this a few times during the season, and I'm going to say it every time I see it. Shanahan can be a little too conservative sometimes. And at the end of the first half, there were 31 seconds on the clock, and they had a timeout. They got the ball back, and they were only up 14-10, and they decided to just kneel down and run out the clock to halftime. Of course, in this case, it ended up being okay. The Vikings never scored again. But I can see that coming back to bite them in a game against a better team or a team that has a better offense. Like if they had done this against the Chiefs, that could have been the difference. If we're thinking ahead to the Super Bowl, right? That could be the difference. So I want to see Shanahan be a little bit more aggressive in situations like that where they have an opportunity to at least kick a field goal, go up by 7 points. 4 points is very different from 7 points. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, they are getting the ball in the second half, so they don't need to try to score here. No, that's garbage. They had an opportunity and they didn't take advantage of it. And I think in a football game, in an NFL football game, whereas they say, Joseph, if you know that they say this, that any team can beat any team on any week, you have to do something with 31 seconds and a timeout.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say points matter there for a second, but yes, they also say that any team
Well,
can
they
beat
do
any
say that.
team.
They do say that too.
Yeah, so I'm a little surprised that Cousins was so well contained. He didn't have a terrible game, but I thought he was going to be able to do more. But your guys' front seven was great. I heard them say that 5 first-round picks of the Niners had a sack in that game. Did you hear that?
Yes.
So which is remarkable. Bosa stepped up, had a great game. He does not look like a rookie at all out there. It's amazing how good he is. And obviously your guys' run game was dominant. You keep that up. And Jimmy G had a decent game, but that's the thing is with your guys' defensive line and running game, you don't even need Jimmy G to be excellent, and you guys will still win. So excited to see the Niners win. And glad to see Jeremy had a smile when he picked us up from the airport. And you can take it next week.
So I am going to complain about the rules for a second. Number one is, for the last time, unnecessary roughness calls have to get reviewed. We've seen so many bad calls on this front, especially... I mean, we see calls that should be called that weren't, and calls that were missed. And this was a case of a call where they called the foul, but it shouldn't have been one, and it was actually against someone from the Vikings. I just hate that because it just makes such a huge difference. 15 yards is such a big swing, and there needs to be. Like if a ref sees shoulder-to-shoulder contact, or they think it's shoulder to helmet or helmet to helmet, maybe it's not. Maybe they don't have a great angle and they need to look at it and say, okay, no, that wasn't. Because a lot of times we've seen plays where you see the replay and you realize, oh yeah, that was shoulder-to-shoulder or something, right? It wasn't helmet to helmet and it shouldn't have been called. So we need to see that. But then the other one I got to say, when a ball carrier is picked up off the ground by 4 defenders, it's time to blow the whistle. All right? That's how guys get hurt. Just blow the friggin' whistle. And so I thought it was going to be like one of those torture devices where they're grabbed by each limb and just pulled apart. It's like you got to blow the whistle in that kind of situation. So I don't know. Are all the refs too old now or something? I just feel like we have these bad ball spots. We've got bad unnecessary roughness calls, which shows bad eyes. We've got bad whistles. It just is awful this year. All right. Titans at Ravens. I'm going to let Joseph take this one. I think we can call this one the upset of the weekend, though.
Oh, totally. And in fact, if you're looking at baseline stats on this game, you would not be able to tell who won. In fact, you would actually lean towards the Ravens. So let's go over that real quick. So total plays, Titans 53, Ravens 92. Total yards, Titans 300, Ravens 530. Here's which is interesting though. Total drives, they both had 11 drives, and they both had approximately 5.7 yards per play. Time of possession, Titans almost 28 minutes, Ravens the remainder 32 minutes. So with that, you think, wow, domination by the Ravens. But here was the key stat, and turnovers. 0 on the Titans, 3 turnovers by the Ravens. And that does not include the turnover on downs. There were also 2 turnover on downs on 4th and short that pretty much cost them the game. So I'm just going to start in the first half and then go to the second half. So in the first half, Titans were up 14-6, but the Titans hadn't really done much. In fact, rewatching this game, not live, was kind of interesting because I just saw that outside of Henry, who was great, the Titans weren't really doing much on their own. They were really, I hate using this word, Jeremy, but opportunistic.
They were opportunistic.
Off of turnovers. In fact, they scored, if you include turnovers on downs, which is, I would consider somewhat of a turnover, 3, if not, I don't know if it was 4, but I know it was at least 3 of their touchdowns were off of turnovers. They scored initially because the Ravens drove, right, on that first drive, and they were doing well, and then Jackson threw that pick, which was mostly Jackson's fault, but even then, okay, take that back. It was mostly Andrew's fault. It was a little high throw, but it was catchable, and it just bounced off his hands, and they were picked off. Well, the Titans scored a touchdown off of that. And then they had the 4th and 1, and they got turned over. And then eventually another pick. So, yeah, they scored at least 3 touchdowns off of turnovers because Tannehill was 7 of 14 for 88 yards.
Barn burner, man.
Yeah. He only had 4 or 5 pass attempts in the second half, whereas Jackson had 36 pass attempts in the second half alone. So very lopsided there. So they go 14-6 in the halftime. And what changed in the second half is I think the Ravens felt like they had to rush, right? Jackson was off. There was a few dropped passes. He was off on his throws, right? The speed of his throws, the height, heck, even the spiral. Like sometimes he threw a few ducks a couple times. He was just off. And I think he was nervous. Like he felt like he, had to bring this amazing comeback when it was only 14-6 going into the third quarter. And the Titans offense hadn't been great. Derrick Henry had been good, but it was steady. Nothing was crazy. Well, let's see, there's a few plays that really cost him here. Where's it at? All right, so third quarter, it's 4th and inches. I rewatched this play probably like 8 or 9 times at least. Third quarter, 10 minutes left. It's 4th and inches on the Titans' 18-yard line. And sorry, let me back up. Earlier in the game, first half, they had a 4th and 1. They're down, and they're in the red zone. They should have kicked a field goal. The Titans had not shown to have been a great team, even though they had 14 points. And you go for the points. You just get the 3 points, and instead they go for a 4th and 1. They lose it. Titans ended up scoring on that that drive, I believe. Now let's go to the 4th and inches. This was the pivotal point of the game. You're at the 18-yard line of the Titans. They should have either kicked a field goal.
How much time was left at this point?
10 minutes in the third quarter.
Okay.
So, 2 things. Either A, you just kick the field goal. B, what really should have happened is when they go in for it, Lamar Jackson did not trust himself. He had a lack of confidence in his ability, or he had a mental mistake because he easily could have gotten that first down. Essentially what happened was he went to his right. Mark Andrews was making a great block there on the edge. He wanted to cut in before the tight end. Instead, he stopped, turned around, he stopped his momentum, turned around to where all of the players are, and got hit. It was a turnover on downs, and that basically ended the game. All he had to do was just go to the right of Andrews, run laterally down, parallel to the line of scrimmage. He would have easily had the first down. There was only one other player that was tracking him who could have been blocked, but even if he wasn't, he would have easily gotten the first down. And if Jackson made one juke move to turn upfield, he could have gotten a touchdown or a big play because no one was there. After watching it over and over and over again, it was just clear that Andrews was blocking this guy perfectly. I could have made that play for that first down, and he just had to cut up, and it would have been easy. But instead, I think he got nervous, and he stops his momentum, turns around, gets hit, and that pretty much seals the game. So it was just frustrating to see. And then he gets nervous in the fourth quarter. He stays in the pocket too long after the pocket collapses, and he goes to throw it, and he fumbles it. Titans score on the very next play. Game over.
Yeah, that you described a lot of components, I think, of why that in summation sort of describe why the Ravens fell apart on Saturday, because that was the first time all season that they had failed to convert a 4th and 1.
Oh yeah, I heard that stat, yeah.
And they failed twice. And not only that, but you could tell Jackson was uncomfortable. The Titans D-line ate their Wheaties that morning because they were giving him a lot of pressure. And I mean, I don't think that might have been, as far as like sacks and interceptions and his comfortability level, I think that was probably his worst game of the season. But what's funny is that if you look at the stat lines, you would think he had like this monster game. I mean,
Well,
wasn't he responsible for like 500 yards?
Oh yeah, he had 20 carries for 143 yards.
Yeah, he was
which is very
he
good.
was crazy. But you would never guess that just by watching the game. Right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
would never have thought that he ran for 143 yards. If I had to guess, to be honest, when we were we were watching it on and off live while we were eating dinner, but I would have guessed like, I don't know, 70 or 80 yards maybe.
Well, the thing was that this just goes to show that it really what happens, how do you conclude a drive? They had a lot of drives where they'd get down there and then they turn the ball over.
Yeah, and they thought they were only playing for the touchdown. It was like they thought they had to go for a touchdown every time. And I think they, I can see why, because they're a team that's committed to going for it on 4th down all season long. That's been their philosophy. They've scored a lot of touchdowns. They're very confident in their run game, and I felt like they just didn't adjust to the fact that wasn't working. And they didn't take the points that they should have taken, because I think there were at least 2, maybe 3 drives where they were down on the Titans side of the ball or the Titans side of the field and could have kicked, right? Yeah. And then maybe that would have, who knows, that could have turned around the game, but they chose not to do that.
And John Harbaugh should know better. That's why I want to know how much of this was Jackson versus pressure on Harbaugh, because I would say in the fourth quarter, the second half, especially the fourth quarter, Jackson looked rush, and he wasn't making the best decisions. But this seemed almost to be like lack of game management from higher ups.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
And because the Titans, like, if you take away the turnovers, the Titans probably don't even win this game, even with the 12 points the Ravens scored. They just happened to score, they just took every turnover and made the best of it.
Yeah.
So, but also props to the Titans, and shout out to, before we move on here, Derrick Henry.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
In his first 4 playoff games ever, has 561 rushing yards, which is absurd. And he breaks the tied record between Terrell Davis and Arian Foster, who had 515 rushing yards. So he has the record by 46 yards now. What's even more impressive is that in his second playoff game, which was against the Patriots a couple years ago, he only had 28 rushing yards. So he had 500 and was that 33, 34 rushing yards in 3 playoff games.
Yeah.
So props to him. I hope he doesn't get burnt out. Jeremy and I talked about this. We hope that he does not burn himself out and get too tired for the AFC game. While we have a team that we're rooting for and we think is going to win, which you can guess who that is, we still want to see a good game out of him. And it'd be a bummer to see him just get gassed or get injured because he's been overrun. But he has been great.
Yeah, and that's the biggest concern I think was just that he's been carrying the ball on average like 30 times a game, and I just don't know if they can keep that up for against the Chiefs and then again in the Super Bowl. They just seem to be relying on him a lot, and I don't know if that's going to work long
Well,
term. But I mean, the thing you gotta give, like you said, give the Titans credit, but I mean, where was Baltimore's defense in this game? I felt like they couldn't protect the deep pass after those turnovers, and then they couldn't stop Henry, and it was like everybody's made a big deal about this star-studded secondary and all that, and they couldn't do it when it counted. And that's the test of a good defense, I think. So I have one more thought on this game, and then we're going to move on to the next one. If you run out of bounds, you can't be the first player to touch the ball when you come back.
oh really?
I that's one of those boneheaded things where we say that should never happen. And it happened really early on in the game. There was a Titans player that ran like a mile out of bounds, and then he came back and was the first player to touch it. He downed it at the 5, but then because the rule is that if it's downed inside the 5 illegally, then it just counts as a touchback.
Oh,
So they lost, what was that? Or I think it was like on the 7 or something. It ended up being a 17-yard loss because of that penalty. So coach better, use your noggin better. That should never happen. All right. Sunday afternoon, Texans at Chiefs. So final score was 51-31. And the whole time, Joseph and I and our buddy were sitting on the couch watching this game thinking, this is getting crazy. And as the score just kept climbing and climbing, we started researching like the highest scoring NFL postseason games because we thought, okay, this is at the rate that they're going, it's getting up there. And I think with the 82 points, it ended up being like 5th,
6th, I think.
6th of all time. And they were close. Like the next couple were in like the high 80s. So one more touchdown would have put them, I think, in 3rd place. So this was a crazy high scoring game. But Joseph, do you want me to describe the turning point in this game? Because I think that's probably the most interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah,
Or do you want to go for it?
Go ahead and then I'll comment off of you.
Okay. So looking at the final score, you'd never think that the situation I'm about to describe would happen, but it did. So the turning point in this game was when the Texans were up 21-0. I don't remember what quarter. Was it it early in the second quarter, I think?
There were 11 minutes left in the second quarter.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so they'd scored 21 in the first quarter, but then it was 11 minutes left in the second quarter. And the Texans were on the Chiefs side of the field. They were in field goal range, and they had to make a pivotal decision. The decision was either to kick a field goal or to go for it on 4th and short. Putting on our coach's hat here, your decision is get the 3 guaranteed points because they were close enough. I think it was kind of a chip shot. They weren't gonna miss the field goal. So you go up 24-0 and then kick off and risk a big return, which can always happen, especially in a team like Kansas City at home with their legion of Zoom. Or you try to go for it on 4th down, burn more time off the clock, and then potentially, if you do get the first down, maybe get a touchdown and go up 28-0, which should be by all means insurmountable unless you're Tom Brady in 2017. They decided to kick the field goal and get the points. And lo and behold, on the very next kickoff, the Chiefs return it to like the Texans 45. And then on, I think it was 1 or 2 plays later, they score a touchdown. It was like a really fast touchdown. So it's now 24-7. And including those 7 points, the Chiefs went on to score 41 unanswered points after that Texans field goal.
In a row.
7
consecutive
consecutive touchdowns.
With 3 of them being in the second quarter in 3.5 minutes.
Yes. So, I mean, if you're Bill O'Brien, you're thinking like, doing a post-mortem on this game and look back on that moment. I'm sure he had nightmares about that moment. But like, on the other hand, though, we were shouting at the screen, but there's a part of me that says you can't really blame, because if you go up 24-0, you got to feel pretty good about that. I mean, of course, nobody would predict that a team would score 7 straight touchdowns, right? I mean, that's just statistically incredibly improbable. But we knew in our gut when we were watching it that was the wrong decision, and it turned out to be the wrong decision.
Yeah, watching the Texans in the first quarter and a half of the game, their offense was clicking because they had gotten the ball, I think, to start. They already had the ball or got the ball to start the second quarter, and they just very fluently drove down before the field goal. So, and up to that point, the Chiefs were so sloppy, right? They had the muffed punt reception where Tyreek Hill should have called a fair catch but didn't. And then fumbled it. You had all the dropped passes. You had Mahomes was off. Like, the Chiefs were a mess.
Yeah, they looked terrible.
So what do? Yeah, you don't kick off when they have Hardman and who's a speedster and is dangerous on returns, as well as Tyreek Hill, and you don't go for the safe play. Here's the thing: worst case scenario, you miss it, but you're still showing the Chiefs that you have the guts to go for it, and then it behaves as a good punt because they're down in the red zone, and now you force the Chiefs to drive the ball 80 yards. They've barely been able to get a first down in the first, almost 18 minutes of the game. You force them to do that, which they haven't done so far, and not allow a dangerous play in the kickoff. Or you get the first down when your offense has been great, and you put the nail in the coffin, and you're up 28-0. Not only would it have been more insurmountable because of points, but would have crushed the morale of the Chiefs. And I don't think they could have overcome that. So I feel like the Texans should have kind of had that going off in their minds, like, oh, worst case scenario, best case scenario. And yeah, when you have the chance to put a nail in the coffin, you do it, because the risk is what? Oh, we're still up 21-0, and now they have to drive the ball 80 yards, and this just behaves as a punt. That's it.
Right.
So I'll move on from ranting there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to say that the Chiefs earned that victory. I mean, after looking awful in the first quarter, they stepped it up and showed exactly what that Andy Reid offense can be, and they just soared into the air with 51 points. So they're looking hot right now, and it's interesting because we see this super explosive team with the Chiefs are now going to play this crazy, and I'm going to use the word again because in this case it sort of fits, opportunistic team in the Titans. Who's going to do better, right? You've got this powerful run game with a quarterback that is not very prolific, but very efficient and capitalizes on situations. And you've got a Chiefs team that can just easily score several touchdowns. What's going to happen? And this is going to be, in my opinion, a lot more fascinating than the Niner-Packer game. Like, if you're a neutral observer and you only could watch one game, I would watch Titans at Chiefs this weekend, because they are. It is going to be fascinating to see this matchup, because you don't see a team like the Titans get this far very often, and you don't see a team like the Chiefs flop like they did last week or this last weekend very often. So I think we're in for a good one. All right, our final game of the weekend, and probably the most controversial game of the weekend, was Seahawks at Packers. So the Packers win 28-23. Um, and I'll start off by saying that the Packers were up 21-3 at half. And how many times have I said that when you're playing Seattle, and it doesn't matter if you're in Seattle or not, doesn't matter. When Russell Wilson is the quarterback, the first half of a football game doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And more proof of that was that not only did the Packers just allow Wilson to run amok in the second half, he ran for like 64 yards on 7 carries. And on top of that, the Seahawks had never established a run game. Like outside of Russell Wilson, I think they had like 20 rushing yards. They got pressure on Wilson, 5 sacks, 10 QB hits. The Seahawks scored touchdowns on 3 straight drives. Packers did manage to score once. So the score was 28-23 with several minutes left in the game. But the way the Packers looked in that like late third, early fourth quarter, you could tell everyone was holding their breath. And this just felt like the classic case of Seattle coming back. And just imagine being in that stadium, being a Packers fan, and experiencing another Seattle comeback win after what happened in 2014. Oh man, I don't know if I could ever come to Lambeau Field again if that had happened. But Seattle missed their 2-point conversion on the third touchdown, so they were 5 points down from the Packers.
He got wrecked.
Yeah. So they did stand tall there, and then on the final drive, I'll let Joseph take this one because this was sort of the controversial moment. But the Packers picked up 2 critical first downs on their next drive that sealed the game. But I'll let Joseph describe the kind of controversial moment of the game as it in the closing minutes.
Well, if you don't mind, I actually would like to back up to the first quarter with the fumble recovery issue. That was a controversial play because I wanted to get your thoughts. I rewatched it, and I think I agree with Gene Steratore where it looks like, probably like 80% recovery by the Packers, but 17 was still kind of in there. So did you get the chance to rewatch that?
I didn't rewatch it. But if I remember correctly, the play was that the Seattle fumbled and the ruling on the field was not a Packers recovery, was it?
No, and the thing was, what was weird is how both teams almost internally interpret it as it was because the Packers offense went out and the defense went out naturally. Yep. That one's just tough because you think, okay, is there a better way to try to see how you could have a recovery or not? I know they had some good camera angles, but it wasn't enough. As for the controversial play, yeah. But first though, it was I think 3rd and 8. About 2 minutes and 15 seconds left, and Rodgers just made a gorgeous throw to Devontae Adams, who, by the way, has the postseason record for a Packer receiver in their postseason for yards.
Oh, good for him.
He had 8 receptions, I think, for 160 yards. Monster game. He has shown that he can be one of the best receivers in the league. He doesn't put up the big season-long stats, but at any given moment, when him and Rodgers connect, they've been great. So a great throw and a great catch. But they still needed another first down to seal the game after that. And then we have this 3rd and 9 situation. He throws it to Jimmy G. I'm sorry. Well, I guess he is Jimmy G. But
there can't be 2 Jimmy G's, man.
I got. Oh, man. He throws it to Jimmy Graham.
Come on, we've never called Jimmy Graham Jimmy G. Give me a break.
No, I know, but what happened was I had seen a comment online of Jimmy G versus Jimmy G in the NFC, and it just got stuck in my head. So yeah. Anyways, so he shows it to Jimmy Graham.
I think that was just someone that got lazy typing and decided to turn it into a pun.
And Graham is falling to the ground, and They give him a first down. Now, but yet it looks like he was short. Now, one of the biggest deceptions or reasons why he looked like he was short is because the yellow line, the computer generated yellow line that you see on the television, which as a kid I thought was real until I
Yeah, I did too when I was really young. I was
I was
like,
like,
how do they paint it so fast on every play?
yeah, how do they move it up like that? So that in reality was like a foot and maybe more like 8 inches, but it was ahead of the actual first down. So you had to like in your mind, back up the yellow line
Wait,
a foot.
sorry. When you say ahead, just to be clear, you mean more
It was
than 10
further,
yards or less than 10 yards?
more than 10
More than
yards.
10 yards. Okay.
Yeah, it was further down. So you had to realize that. But the issue is when you look at all the replays in one, how does the NFL not have great cameras near the first down markers? I realize now that they finally invested in cameras where the first down marker is, but then when they zoomed in, it looks like it was from a video game in the 80s.
I know, I know. Yeah, it was so pixelated and blurry.
But yeah, at the same time, when they show the replay from like the cameras way up, the very expensive
It's
cameras,
like 4K
yeah,
HD.
and it's zoomed in on like his elbow.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, that's not the angle we needed. So the thing is, they showed a replay of now. Doesn't it count? I don't think it's your head, but if your shoulder hits, that counts as being down, right? I don't know about your head, but your shoulder counts.
I think shoulder counts.
So the thing is, you just do the simple math. You see how he holds the ball in his chest, right? It's not like he never extended. And
Well, okay, he had the ball was in his forearm and his forearm was a little bit ahead of his chest.
but as he's going to the ground, his shoulder and helmet hit, and they hit near the line. So even if the line, like it's just before the computer generated image, so even if the line is around 8 inches ahead, it's either fourth and inches or it's very close. And I just felt like that. I personally think he was short. I think he was just short. And this just goes to show that we either need better replay systems or a better way to spot the ball because spotting in the playoffs has been terrible so
Spotting
far.
all season has been
Yeah,
terrible.
spotting's been terrible. And I can't necessarily blame the refs for thinking this was a first down, but in the replay, it just, I personally think he was short, man. I think he was a little short.
Okay, well, I agree that it was a tough call. I personally, call me a Niner homer all you want, but there was one replay from the side that made it look like it was the blurry view. And again, this is bad, but if you drew, because the camera is sitting right where that little arrow marker is, the orange arrow marker that marks the first down. If you drew a line on the screen straight across the screen to where, just straight across to determine what the line of gain is, it intersects the ball. It intersected the ball.
Even with his shoulder down. And
Right. Well, with the freeze frame that they showed, and this is where it's complicated, is the freeze frame that they showed, it made it look like it intersected the ball. But the problem was the image wasn't clear enough for me to know if he had a body part hit the ground that would have caused him to be down before that.
Yeah.
So I get that given that that's where they spotted it, I don't know, and given that they had that crappy camera angle, I don't know if they had enough evidence to overturn on a replay. That's the challenge, I think.
Which
But
then makes the initial call, that's the issue. That's the paradox is the
right,
initial
exactly, is
call.
that the initial call just needs to be more accurate, and we've brought up many times now in this show that the balls need to have a sensor on them. I mean, we have this super accurate GPS technology that exists where you can drive around a corner on your car and some satellite out in space knows exactly where you are, yet we can't put a teeny little sensor on a ball to tell us exactly where the ball is. I mean,
With how
come
much money
on,
the NFL makes?
NFL. Is it really going to break the NFL's bank and Roger Goodell's $40 million a year salary to pay for something like that? I mean, come on. So, yeah, I will accept that this was a tough one and that maybe it was wrong. And yet again, though, I mean, we don't know if it had been fourth and an inch. the Packers may have just done a QB sneak or done something to get it anyway, right? I think
I
they
think
would
they
have.
would have. I think they would have gone for it, and I don't think that this would have mean that automatically that the Seahawks would have driven back and won. It's just you'd think that by
Although
this
in the
point
moment it felt like that, but
it did. You just would think that they would be able to make a have the technology or means to make a better call, but yeah. But
so
you know what? Got the Packers won, and it was though it was difficult to see emotionally. Objectively, it was a good comeback by the Seahawks.
yes. And just Clowney got away with his second spearing in the playoffs, so he's done. I get out of here. I'm really glad the Seahawks are out. I get that this one, if I had been a Seahawks fan, I might have been upset by that call at the end there, but Clowney can get out of here. All right. So I have last week we did sort of the football existential question, and I have it's not existential, but I do have a sort of a football philosophy question for you, Joseph. So this question is how how should we define a blowout? What is a blowout in the NFL?
Ooh. Gut feeling, if you don't look at the like home field advantage and like relative strength of a given team, not saying that those shouldn't be in there, but it's just it makes it a more of a you know complicated equation to figure out. Off the top of my head, I would just say 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdown win.
Okay, so you think it can be tied directly to a number?
Um, Not necessarily. I
I mean,
just
I
going
think
off
there's a
my
well,
gut
okay, let me
feeling.
sorry to just real quick to clarify what I mean by that. I think there is a number at which we can say no matter what it is a blowout.
Yeah. So I will say this. I do think that differential is going to be a function of total points, meaning like 30 to 10. I guess if we can do this, right? 20 to 0, 30 to 10, 40 to 20, and 50 to 30. Those have the same differentials, and by this very simple system would all be blowouts. But I don't think they would be the same in blowout because, right, like I think the total points would matter. Like think about this. If it was 80 to 60, I wouldn't call that a
Oh
blowout.
no, not at all.
And 60 points is ridiculous. So at some point, you're right. There is a threshold, and so it actually is a function of total points. Um, but for simplicity's sake, 20 touch points or 3 touchdowns is a good starting point, I would say.
I think that's fair. I think there has to be you have to factor in number one whether the points that the losing team scored were garbage points at the end of the game or not.
Well, that's
That
true.
that matters. I also think it matters uh, when the points were scored in the game. Like if let's say we're talking about a 30 to 10, if it was 10 like 17 to 10 like in the early fourth quarter, and then let's say it was 17 to 3, and then the losing team scores a touchdown and gets 17-10, and then in the final 10 minutes of the fourth quarter the winning team scores 2 touchdowns. Is that a blowout?
Eh,
I don't probably not. I don't
yeah.
I don't think.
And the example that I know this is coming from is the Texans game, and that one, in my opinion, is not a blowout at all because one, I think relative dominance has to be considered, and the Texans dominated almost 2 quarters of that game, like a quarter and a half, and it was like out, Chiefs, miracles that 3 touchdowns in 3.5 minutes to bring them within a tied game, and even late in the game, I think it was early fourth quarter, late third quarter, it was 41 to 30. It was 41 to 31. That's not a blowout. And then they ended up scoring a touchdown and a field goal in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs did. So yeah, this wasn't a blowout. Not necessarily by the points, but just looking at the flow of the game, momentum shifts, and how even late in the game, the Texans had a chance. They didn't have the momentum, but they had a chance. Um, though it is a decisive win.
Yes.
So
I think if the winning team scored 40 points or less but wins by 4 touchdowns, that's always a blowout.
yes, no matter how it happens, yeah, because
Yeah.
it just
All right. So we could talk about that all day, but I think that kind of captures the essence of why it's difficult. And you're right that the Chiefs Texans game is kind of why we were thinking about that, because it is an interesting case where we were wondering, would we call this a blowout or not? Um, all right. So we'll move on to our second segment of the evening, and that is our commentators say the darndest things. And Joseph, I want to tell you something that you may not know that you may have learned in the Seahawks at Packers game. Are you ready for this?
what is it?
Russell Wilson, he does nothing but win.
That's right, right. Even though we heard that after the Cowboys lost or during the Cowboys game
Yeah. And guess what? He lost.
again.
Drum roll. Okay. So my second quote is there was this great. So,
Oh, guess who said it? The same guy, Joe Buck.
yes. So there was this great post-game presser by Richard Sherman after the Niners-Vikings game. And pardon me as I go with this, I'm reading off of a subtitled YouTube video because it's a long thing that wasn't scripted, that was never scripted out. But he says one of the reporters asks him about the situation where he got the interception in, and he told him that it was man coverage, and then he says, it was this sort of exasperated look on his face. He says, I get tired of hearing, oh man, he's a zone corner. I get tired of hearing the excuses for why I'm great. It was man coverage. I covered the man, picked the ball off in the playoffs and big games. I show up. I show up year in, year out, whether it's 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. Unless I tear my Achilles, I'm out there and I'm doing my job at a higher level. And I think I get tired of the excuses, for what I'm good. Like, oh my God, they're playing zone. Oh my God, it was this guy. Oh my God, the receiver slipped. Oh my God. It's like, why don't other people get those outs there? You mean I know it's a lot of other corners out there who have the same opponents I have. It's odd. It's like people got frustrated that I was so confident early on in my career. I was confident early on so that people wanted me to fail, and when I didn't fail, it's like, how do we tear them down in other ways? How do we find, and blah 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 blah. It's going too fast for me to keep reading it, but I love the moment of, I'm tired of hearing excuses for why I'm great. Classic Sherman. He is one of the greats, and he deserves to be called one of the greats. I didn't hear anybody ripping on him for that interception, but I don't know. Maybe there were some Vikings fans that were heckling him or something. All right, so our final segment of the night is our predictions, and we're gearing up for championship week. One game left in the AFC, one game left in the NFC. I'm coming in to this game 5-3 after a 3-1 week for the divisional round. Joseph was also 3-1, so he's still a game ahead of me at 6-2. The one game that we were incorrect was the Ravens game, and I bet you a whole heck of a lot of people in Vegas were incorrect on that one too. So I'll give my AFC pick first, and then I'll let Joseph give his NFC pick first. So my AFC pick of Titans at Chiefs is Chiefs.
Same. And then for the NFC, we have Packers at Niners. I'm going Niners.
Same here. I think this is I was overconfident in 2011 when the Giants beat the Packers in the divisional round. I was like, oh yeah, we're going to feast on the Giants when they come in, and then we lost. I'm less naive now, or I'd like to think so. And I just simply think the Niners are a better team than the Packers. They're playing at home. Their defense is healthy. I think they have everything they need to do to win. And I think the Chiefs are coming off of the Walrus reminded them that they know how to score. So I think the Chiefs are going to take this one, although I think it is going to be a good game.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't stop Derrick Henry, then it's going to be a good game. But if they can limit him, it's going to be a blowout. As for the Packers game, Rodgers going to try to show up, but honestly, that front seven, because the Seahawks, they didn't they did an okay job, but the Niners are going to go out there firing, and I think it could be really ugly if they take out him throwing on the run and limit his time in the pocket. It could get really bad. So look out for Armstead and Buckner and Bosa just trying to take him down. So
Yep. That's exactly what I'm hoping is going to happen.
now I got to add something here, and you're going to like this and simultaneously not like it
Uh-oh.
because it's something that college football is
Uh-oh.
doing better than the NFL.
Uh-oh.
So yes, I have been watching the college game this whole time,
Uh-oh.
but they have ref cams on some of the refs' hats.
Oh, like GoPros on their heads?
Yes, and it helped in deciding. During the game I was watching, during this show with you. There was a touchdown play by Randy Moss's son, actually, Randy Moss's tight end son, and the ref was standing right there because they also have the cameras in the pylon too, which didn't they have that for pro and college. That didn't help, but the ref cam did because the ref was right there. I'm like, wait a second, why don't we have this in the NFL? Or just those kind of cameras every 10 to 15 yards along the sideline, elevated at like 8 feet in the air. Why don't we have that? That'd be great.
And why don't we have it straight down aerial view cameras and all this stuff? I guess the NFL just can't afford it, man.
Yeah, but college
It's a bank breaker. It's a
Yeah,
bank breaker.
yeah.
College has all the money. NFL has no money. That's how it is. That's the truth. All right. So that's a wrap, everybody. If you enjoyed tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad and at Neuralizer_. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. I typically upload on Tuesdays, but since the new YouTube thing, they actually upload right away. So if you've missed the episode, you can go ahead and watch it right now. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you after the championship games.
Go Niners.